Welcome to the Chapel Thrill Podcast with Hunter Caparelli and JJ Jones.
The last two players I would say that Carolina should potentially look to get. I like Nicholas Afgalis from Virginia Tech. He's an international. He was really good this year in the ACC. What's going on, Tar Heel Nation? Welcome to the 14th edition of the Chapel Thrill Pod, your home for all things Carolina basketball. Hunter Caparelli, sideline reporter, studio host, analyst for ACC Network Extra. And joining me is a brand new guest on the show. He's a current high school senior at Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, California. Malloy Smith. He reaffirmed his commitment last week to attend and play basketball at the University of North Carolina, following in the footsteps of his dad, Kenny Smith, who played for the Tar Heels from 1983 to 87, as well as his brother KJ, who played 3 seasons for the Heels from 2018 to 2021. Malloy, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk to you and have you on the show. Since we aired our last episode, the basketball transfer portal had literally just opened, and it was midnight last night that the portal had officially closed. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, but I just want to start off with you. I mean, you originally committed last March to play basketball under Coach Davis at Carolina. The program then underwent a coaching change and then hired longtime NBA coach Michael Malone. We talked a little bit off camera, but what ultimately led to your decision to recommit to UNC, and what, if anything, I guess, changed from your initial recruitment?
Well, just, hearing all the news and going through hearing the process of them and who they may or may not hire, it was interesting to see. But when we found out who was hired, my dad really supported Michael. He's a great guy. They actually did a show together. So they're pretty familiar with each other. And I know I was just getting this first phone call and text from him was great. He's a great guy. You can tell he loves basketball and is just obsessed with it. You want to be around people who are gonna make you better, and I still feel like Michael can do that for me, just get me to my best self in basketball wise and being a normal person as well. So yeah.
You talk a little bit about yourself as a player. How would you describe, I guess, your playing style to some of the UNC fans who might not have seen you play yet?
Yeah, well, I try and play with a lot of like speed and explosiveness. I try and get out in the fast break. I'm a very big playmaker. I like to say I'm pass first because I like making plays for my teammates. I think I'm a little explosive. I think I definitely have some athleticism from the genes. So
of course.
Yeah, that's kind of my play style. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about the genes growing up around, obviously, your dad's legacy. When did you, I guess, first believe that there would be an opportunity to potentially follow his path and go to the same school that he played at 40 years ago?
Well, he actually has a basketball camp every year where a bunch of kids go. It's like 250 kids to 800 kids some years. So I would go there. I've been going there every year since I was born, since before I could even walk, before I could play basketball, up until last year. So I've been going to North Carolina and doing a basketball camp every year. So pretty much every year since I've been born, I mean, I've just always dreamed of playing in that stadium, like with an actual game, when it actually matters. So that's really been my dream my whole life.
Hopefully it'll still be that same stadium, the Dean Dome. There's been a lot of speculation about the dome potentially relocating and being broken down because it's super old. So hopefully they push that a couple more years and you'll be able to still play in the Dean Dome. It's a magical place to play in, I will say. Outside of your dad, who do you say has been the biggest influence on you, on your mindset, I guess, as a player and as well as a person on and off the court?
Well, I'd have to say with basketball related wise, it'd definitely be my brother and my cousin. My cousin moved to Los Angeles in like 7th grade, and that was when him and my brother would really just like work out a lot. It was actually during COVID time. So, you really can't leave the house, and you I started really taking basketball serious during COVID. And we'd be working out all the time. He coached my AAU teams. My brother was at every games, and my cousin was the coach on the sidelines. So I've just really been learning a lot from them. But just in the life aspect, of course, my mom as well. Just trying to, she kind of tries to make me focus on things outside of basketball.
Right.
Basketball isn't everything, and you're gonna have a life outside of basketball. So she just
Right.
tries to teach me those types of things.
Right. You spoke about your dad, you spoke about your brother, you spoke about your cousin. How do you, I guess, handle comparisons to, either your dad or your brother without really letting it define who you are as a player?
I mean, comparisons are obviously just like a blessing anyways,
Yeah, of
because you being compared to anyone is just it's great. I mean, especially to
course.
your parents or your brother. I mean, I really just try and go out there and just play my game.
Of
I don't
course.
try of course you try and model your game after other people, but I'm not gonna let like what my dad did define my game or I mean, obviously learn a lot from him just being my personal trainer pretty
Right.
much. So, yeah.
Right. And I guess how would you evaluate when you're going through the recruitment process? Obviously, it's different for everyone, but when you got that tech, you mentioned getting a text from Coach Malone, and you evaluated what the program might look like. When did you realize it would be like the right fit for you to go to?
I always felt like it was the right fit. I always knew
Yeah.
North Carolina was going to hire the right guy. I mean, they really value family tradition. So I knew if it wasn't going to be someone who went to North Carolina or coached there before,
Right.
I knew that they're going to hire a guy who really valued the same traditions that
Of
line up
course.
with the school. And we have a great alumni base. Um, just with all the past people who went there, Coach Williams, like they're going to make
Right.
sure they hire the right guy who values the same thing that Coach Hubert Davis did and anyone else before him.
That's great to hear. North Carolina basketball commit Malloy Smith, son of Tar Heel legend Kenny Smith. Malloy, as we wrap things up here, I want to do a little rapid fire hit and run segment.
Okay, let's
I'll
go.
I'll give you a question. You give me a quick answer. It could be basketball related, non-basketball related.
Okay. All
You
right,
ready to
good.
go?
Yeah, I'm
All
ready.
right. All right. First one. Who would win on a one who would win in a one-on-one right now between you and your dad?
Probably me. He's getting a little
Yeah.
old. I mean, a shootout is different. If we're
Yeah.
shooting only threes, might be a little different, but 1v1, it's not even close.
Cool. What's the most competitive moment you've had within your family, basketball, non-basketball related?
Probably playing board games at home.
Yeah.
If the neighbors probably think we're crazy every time we're playing board games. Yeah, so yeah, probably that.
What's your favorite board game?
Honestly, it's more of like it's not even a board game. It's called Mafia, where you like two
Okay.
people are like the murderers or whatever, and like everyone has to like close their eyes and you have to find out who's the murderer or whatever.
Yeah.
That game gets really intense. It gets
Yeah.
really intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could play pickup with any UNC basketball legends, who would you pick up on your team?
What would I pick up? I'd probably pick Cam Johnson for sure.
Okay.
Um,
That's a good one.
Luke May,
Mm,
um, Theo Pinson.
okay.
He's a pretty funny guy. He
Yeah,
just
he
looked
is pretty
like
funny.
he was like, I need a point guard now. I'm not gonna go with my dad because that's just kind of
Right.
obvious. But
R You got RJ Davis. You got
I'm gonna do a throwback. I'm gonna do Ty Lawson. I liked him.
all right.
Yeah,
That's a good pull. That's a
yeah.
good pull.
I'm gonna do more recent. I'm gonna leave the
Yeah.
legends alone. I'll leave the
No, of
legends
course.
alone.
Of course. Of
Yeah,
course. That was great.
yeah, yeah.
What's your go-to pregame song or pregame artist right now before you go to a game?
I like to listen to like Drake.
Mm,
I like NBA YoungBoy.
that's a good one.
Um,
Drake's dropping a new album soon. So
I was the first to hear about it. I know the date, May 15th. I'm
yeah,
ready. I'm gonna have a listening party for sure.
yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
good.
those are probably my top two right now.
Yeah. What restaurant in Chapel Hill are you most excited about trying, or you've already tried and most excited about getting back and trying again for four
I
years?
I I'm gonna hate myself for not remembering the name, but I've been there a lot. It's like a breakfast place, and I'm gonna hate myself for not remembering.
Is it
But
on
it's a
Franklin Street?
yeah, it is.
Is it Sutton's?
That sounds very familiar, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure. It's like
Okay.
they take photos with everyone who goes in there,
Right.
you know.
That's Sutton's. That's
Okay, then
Sutton's.
yeah.
So
Okay, then yeah.
very, very
I'm
famous
excited.
breakfast spot that everyone
Yes.
always loves right on Franklin Street.
Yes. I would go.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been there a good amount of times, so I'm excited to get back
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
A few more here. What's the greatest basketball game that you've ever watched or attended?
I actually attended the game where LeBron broke the scoring record.
Really?
So that was a pretty cool game when he had like 30 and
Yeah.
broke the scoring. It was crazy. It was pretty fun to watch.
That famous picture where everyone's holding out their phone
Yeah,
as
I
he's
was I was in
shooting that
I was in
fadeaway
that I
shot.
was in that photo.
You really?
I was one of the guys holding my phone. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. When you're not playing basketball, what do you like doing for fun, other than playing board games?
Um I've been like trying to play more video games. I didn't play
Yeah.
any during the season, so I started like picking it up again. So
2K?
I've been playing a little bit of 2K. I've been playing like some like old like caveman games where you're like a
Yeah.
caveman and you're trying to like survive. I've been playing some of those games, but yeah, those
Yeah.
are the two games I'm
Cool,
playing.
cool. Last question here. What excites you most about going to UNC this fall?
Really just meeting new people. I mean, just not even just the team, but the coaches and the students there. I'm just excited to like start my next 4 years of, you know, being at Carolina Tar Heels. So I'm excited.
I love that. Awesome. That was Hit and Run with Malloy Smith. Incredibly thoughtful young player. Definitely a bright future ahead with the Tar Heels. You're clearly someone who understands both the opportunity and responsibility that comes with wearing that Carolina blue. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us, giving the audience some insight behind the scenes of the program from the last few weeks. We'll take a quick break here. We'll step aside, and when we come back, my co-host JJ Jones will join me, and we'll break down Coach Malone's recent signings over the past few weeks from the portal. So stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Chapel Thrill Pod. Great to hear from Malloy Smith. Had a lot of great things to say about the program, and I know he's super excited to get down to Chapel Hill this summer. Joining me now is my co-host, former UNC football wide receiver JJ Jones. JJ, since we aired our last episode, the college basketball transfer portal had officially opened, and then it was midnight last night that the portal officially closed. So we'll break down Coach Michael Malone's signings from the portal in his first few weeks at the helm of the Carolina men's basketball program. We'll also provide updates on what's left for Coach Malone to square away with the roster. And we'll also give our thoughts and opinions on who potential starters might be for next season, as well as some early ranking predictions. So let's get into it. We were talking a little bit about it off air, but we'll get into some of the notable departures before we get into notable acquisitions. So, as a lot of fans know, Jonathan Powell, he transferred out. He's going to be going to Pittsburgh. Derek Dixon, who started 16 games as the point guard for Carolina last year, he transferred to Arizona. Luka Bogovac, after initially announcing his return to UNC, he then reconsidered and then entered the portal and landed at Oklahoma State. Kyan Evans transferred to Minnesota, and Zayden High transferred to USF. JJ, out of all those guys, is there any one of those that really like worries you, that you thought in your head it would have been really nice if they had returned? It would have helped maybe next year's roster and team?
Man, I think everybody was hurt by the Derek Dixon news. Him
Yeah,
going to a school like Arizona, that really does hurt because we've seen this move before. A couple years ago,
right.
you had a guy in Caleb Love ended up going to Arizona and absolutely prospering at that university, having a great career there. And I truly believe that Derek Dixon was going to be our next guy at UNC, the next
Yeah,
true combo guard that we groom into being that 2, 3, 4 year player for us down the road. Now it was very sickening seeing him leave, and then also a guy like Luca, you would expect for him to be like, okay, I want to stay at UNC because you have a coach like Mike Malone comes in,
right.
but we're not behind the scenes with those conversations that Mike Malone is having with his team. So maybe it was the best interest with Luca leaving the program because again, we're going to get into it a little bit later, but some of the guys we brought in and some
Yeah,
of the guys that we have retained, I'm I'm not mad about. I will gladly bring those guys in, welcome into the UNC, welcome you to the UNC committee, man, and just I'm super excited. But definitely the Derek Dixon news and Luka Bogavaz. I had a feeling Kai was going to leave. I mean,
Yeah,
we
kind
took
of
a
knew
vote
that.
to do that.
Yeah.
Jonathan Powell, I know he definitely wanted to get a lot more minutes, and
Mhm.
then a guy in Zayden High and James Brown who
Yeah.
had reserve minutes throughout the whole season. I know they're ready to prove that they can play, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. On top of those transfer portal departures, the news also came out last week. Five-star recruit and number 8 ranked player in the 2026 freshman class, Dylan Mingo, decommitted from UNC. He was definitely one of Hubert's Davis guys. There was reports that Carolina and Mingo couldn't come to terms on his NIL contract, as well as questions about how his playing style would fit in Mike Malone's offense. Mike Malone is very much of a ball sharing, pass first kind of coach. And with Dylan Mingo's play style of being kind of a dribble the blood out of the ball type of player, I think just there was questions about whether his style would fit in Malone's offense. So it didn't work out with him, but like you mentioned, Malone definitely got busy in the portal over the past few weeks.
absolutely.
His first transfer portal acquisition as the coach of Carolina was former freshman 6'9" guard Nicholas Ofdalis, who has plenty of potential with his combination of size and skill. He was a bit inconsistent for most of his freshman year with Virginia Tech, but he was good enough where he generated first round NBA draft buzz early on in his campaign. And he definitely has an intriguing combination of size and speed and playmaking ability. He averaged just over 12 points and 5 rebounds this past season. And then about a week and a half of not much other noise coming out of the Tar Heels program. A lot of noise came out on the final day of the portal. After being atop of the board since the portal had opened, Malone was able to get a deal done with Utah transfer guard Terrence Brown Jr. Brown had visited Carolina and Kansas before then ultimately picking the Tar Heels. Brown's scoring ability, I think, surprisingly translated from the NEC, where he played on Fairleigh Dickinson, to the Big 12, where he played with Utah, as he averaged close to 20 points per game this past season. JJ, what excites you most about getting Terrence Brown and Nicholas Ofdalis, two guys who you could potentially see in the starting lineup next year?
Like you said, I think we have guys who can come downhill and score. They can score at will. I know it is kind of a different offensive philosophy with Mike Malone being there, but a guy like Terrence Brown, I mean, he's 6'3", 175.
Yeah.
He's a little bit slimmer than that Seth Trimble build, but he kind of gives me that same explosiveness as Seth, but again, he can shoot the ball as well. I mean, averaging over 20 points
Right.
at Utah. And I think it's just a great story, him being at Fairleigh Dickinson and him betting on himself, going to the Big 12 and proving that he can play at that level. Now for him to take another step, going to UNC, a blue blood school, and being like, okay, I'm excited to get there. And for Avadalis, I mean, he's a very solid player as well. I mean, he, like you said, averaged about 12 points per game. But he also averaged about 31 minutes a game as well last season. So he's a very reliable player that you can have out there. I know he's young, but he has the kind of on-court experience. So he's young in age, but as he is on the court,
super high ceiling.
absolutely, absolutely. So having those two guys come in is a great get. And I know we got two more other guys that we got to get to talk about.
100%. Talking about just going back on Brown, I saw he also contributed nearly 4 assists per game. So I think he could score the ball, but also play make for the rest of his teammates. And as someone who might not be as much of a shooter, I think I've watched a little bit of his tape. He's a super athletic slashing guard who could get to the basket, thrives in transition. I think that translated. He had 2 30-point games this past season. So hopefully that'll translate well to the Heels. But like you mentioned, Malone was not done there. A few hours later, after the news that Terrence Brown was committing to the Tar Heels, the news then came out that one of Carolina's targets who had been linked to them over the past few weeks had also committed to the Heels, NC State transfer guard Matt Abel. So
I love
Abel
it.
will
I
be
love it.
He'll be taking the drive down I-81 coming to Carolina. The former top 25 recruit had also entered the NBA draft as an alternative to the portal, but able to enter this past season as a potential one and done first rounder. He had a bit of an inconsistent season in Raleigh under Will Wade, but there were definitely times where he showed flashes of his high potential through the campaign. He averaged just under 10 points, shooting close to 36% from 3-point range. I know when Carolina went into Raleigh and played the Wolfpack this past season and their one lone showdown, Abel lit the Heels up from 3-point range in that embarrassing loss to the Wolfpack. As far as Matt Abel goes, what excites you most about him being, I think, a much needed perimeter shooter for Mike Malone?
Like you said, much needed perimeter shooter, man. I mean, you look at the transfer portal rankings, he was the fifth ranked shooting guard in the entire portal class.
Yeah.
So this is a very high rated prospect who had a lot of different choices. And for him to stick it out and be like, damn, I don't care that I'm at NC State. I want to go to UNC. I think it's one of those things where he's proven himself that he can play at the highest level. Again, like I've said before, UNC is a very high level, and Matt Abel, he gets it done on the defensive end as well. Just being able to look at him and watching him last year, I know he was just a freshman, but I mean, he has the intangibles of being a great basketball player. And like you said, just the shooting aspect is one of my favorite things because we lost a guy like Luka Bogovac. Kind of those shooters, and maybe Derek Dixon, Jonathan Powell, those kind of guys. So bringing a shooter like this who is at least known in the ACC, so he understands how the ACC teams play. It's very good. Again, not very old in age, but has a lot of on-court experience again, which is amazing.
Totally. The Heels then concluded the day yesterday by making an under-the-radar pickup, finally an FAU transfer forward, Maxime Logue, who averaged just about 11 minutes, 5 points per game, on what should be mentioned 68% field goal percentage for the Owls this past season. I think he's definitely a player who could provide front court depth off the bench for Mike Malone with Zayden High transferring out. Did you like that pickup as well, JJ?
Yeah, like you just said, more of a reserve kind of role I would expect. But again, this will be his third school in 3 years, so hopefully he lands in a school that he needs to. I'm excited to have the Frenchman there, but again, like you said, it's definitely going to be a reserve role. But that's what we need at this point, is having that depth because we didn't have that depth last year. And I think that Mike Malone saw that from the UNC team and understanding that just because he has those, this isn't going to be the Iron 5, Iron 6. He needs to have a complete full team.
100%. So we spoke about Malone's acquisitions so far in the portal. There was also a couple recommitments. So after originally entering the transfer portal, junior guard Jaden Young changed his mind and decided to return to UNC for his senior year. And then another player many Tar Heel fans were excited to hear had also reconsidered his decision to enter the portal and decided to return to UNC for his sophomore year was freshman guard Isaiah Dennis. In his limited action, Dennis shot 50% from the floor and 50% from beyond the arc. Junior forward Jarin Stevenson also announced he would be returning to the Heels for his final season of college. And in addition, 4-star recruit and number 25 ranked player in the 2026 freshman class, Maximo Adams, recommitted to Carolina. He cited that he's always wanted to play for the Heels, and it was his dream still growing up. So he's super excited to be coached by longtime NBA coach Mike Malone. Out of all of those players, JJ, who excites you the most?
I'll have to say Isaiah Dennis, man, just because he has that frame. He's 6'4", 180. And I know he only appeared in about 10 games, but he made those flashes of being like, he can be that guy. I mean, I know he got hurt earlier in the season, so it's very exciting. And I'm not, like you said, a lot of UNC fans want to see a guy like him come in. But I would say also Maximo Adams, a 5-star prospect. I want to see how UNC can produce him and at this next level, because we've had this in the past where some of these guys haven't been able to translate from high school to college. They haven't really been able to get better. But with this new coaching staff, I want to see how Coach Malone takes Adams and understands how he plays and gets him to that next level, because he is Hubert's recruit, but he recommitted to Mike Malone's basketball team. So I want to see how he can do that as well. For sure.
There are still some roster questions left to be answered. that starts off with all ACC big man Henri Veesaar, who is yet to announce his intentions on whether or not he'll be returning to UNC or entering the NBA draft. The early entry NBA draft deadline is this Friday in 2 days. So Veesaar is essentially the cornerstone to Malone's first season, who would be in the preseason All-American conversation should he return to college after averaging 17 points and 9 rebounds per game last season alongside Caleb Wilson. I think retaining Veesaar is the most vital task right now for Malone and his staff. I think he would provide an anchor on the interior. It would give Mike Malone a player to build around with all these other players he's grabbing in the portal. And I think also with the lack of legitimate replacements at his position at the center spot, I think his pending decision is that much more important. What are your thoughts, JJ?
Yeah, being able to retain Henri Veesaar, I think that will be the greatest thing that Mike Malone has done since he stepped on campus. Yeah. Because you have the guy who is experienced, who is an NBA draft prospect. Like, he is a legit prospect.
Yep.
But with this new age of NIL, I think that we are surprised that he didn't decide to come back so early. Like you said, at this point, it's either he comes back to UNC or he goes to the draft. So UNC fans, you got to understand, he's not going to another school. So if he decides to come back to play basketball, he's going to play at UNC. And I know we talked about it earlier before we got live onto the podcast. If we lose a guy like Veesaar, we talked about him. UNC fans know him, Slim Jesus.
Yeah.
We got to go out there. We got to go
get
him. Man. Miikka Muurinen, 6'11", forward from Finland. He played with Lauri Markkanen over in Finland as well. Yeah. He's a potential 5-star recruit. And UNC is in the mix, but I think he's one of those guys that is a stretch 4, stretch 5, like Veesaar was. And I think that's going to be one of those things where if we lose Veesaar, you got to go all in on a guy. I mean, with one of the awesomest nicknames I've heard in a long time.
Slim Jesus. Nothing beats better than Slim Jesus. I mean, everyone obviously knows the success that Mike Malone had with Nikola Jokic with the Denver Nuggets. I think a lot of fans maybe saw like that potential with Henri Veesaar, with him taking over the helm of the program. But if Veesaar was to go to the draft, I think the next best possible replacement would be another international from Europe who maybe is not similar to Nikola Jokic, but is similar in size, in length, and being a high-level athletic freak who can shoot the ball, he could dunk, he excelled at Eurobasket 2025, and because he's a recruit and not a transfer, there's no time limit on when he would need to commit to a team. There's been many other schools showing interest in him between Arkansas, Duke, Indiana, Kentucky, LSU, and Michigan, but Miikka's mom played for the Tar Heels, so that's something that should be considered. And then also,
what'd she play? She played basketball?
She played basketball for the Tar Heels.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Come on. You got to come join Miikka. If you're watching this, you got to come join the Tar Heel family. It's in your blood already.
It's in the blood. So that should be considered. And Chuck Martin, who was the lead recruiter at Arkansas, he joined Coach Malone's staff 2 weeks ago, and he's been one of the lead recruiters for the Heels so far, who was originally involved in Miikka's original recruitment. So I think Carolina could potentially be in the driver's seat with getting Slim Jesus to come to Chapel Hill, but I think a lot left still needs to be done. Lastly, one of Carolina's top portal targets since the beginning of the offseason has yet to commit. That's Wake Forest transfer forward Juke Harris. Harris was second team All-ACC this past season, averaging just under 22 points per game. He had met with the Carolina staff a couple of weekends ago. There was a viral picture going around on social media of him at some restaurant with the coaching staff. So he's been talking with a few different schools. He's also going through the NBA draft process as well, but he's definitely one of the nation's elite scorers if he was to return to college. He enjoyed a breakout season, jumping from just averaging 6 points per game as a freshman to 22 points per game as a sophomore. That ranked top 20 nationally in that category. He also had 3 30-plus point performances as well. The 3 schools currently involved in his transfer portal recruitment is Carolina, Michigan, and Tennessee. There's been rumors that Tennessee had pulled in front, and then there were other rumors that actually wasn't true, and it's all for go for all three schools. So, what are your thoughts on Carolina potentially either getting Juke Harris or Slim Jesus to replace Henri Veesaar if he was to go to the draft?
I think the best bet, and I think we would all be perfectly fine with it, would be getting a guy like Juke Harris. I mean, just because
Yeah.
he's absolutely a dog, and what he's done to the UNC team and what he's done to a lot of other teams in the conference shows that he is one of the best players in the country. I mean,
Yeah.
when you have I'm not surprised he wants to go to a school like Michigan. I think Tennessee surprises me just a little bit. I'm not
Yeah.
sure why
Rick
Tennessee's
Barnes.
in there. Yep, that might be it right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have these NCAA national championship contender teams. So he has to have that ability, like thinking that UNC can win a lot of games. So with that ability and him thinking like that, if he comes to UNC, we would absolutely love to have him.
Yeah.
So he would definitely be my first pick over Slim Jesus because I think Slim Jesus is still a prospect. He's still a product.
Right. Still
He can
young.
always get better. Yeah, he's still
Yeah.
young. He's only 18 years old, a 7-footer basically. While you have a guy like Juke Harris. My only thing is how much money is he going to ask for, and
Right.
how
There's
much
been
money
rumors
can he give?
about 3, 4, even $5 million
See,
to get him to come. So
now if
that's
we're
a lot
trying to
of money.
retain, yeah, it's a
It's a lot
lot
of
of
money.
money nowadays.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my only concern is I would love to have a guy like him, but I understand that some of these athletes, some of these higher level college football and basketball players, they want to get the most money they can. And I mean, I'm
Right.
all for it, but I mean, for the schools, it's hard to pay all that money because
Right.
everybody wants as much money as they
Everyone
can
wants their
get.
money. Everyone
Yeah.
wants their money. He
Mhm.
did show though when Wake Forest went into Chapel Hill and played UNC this past season, he dropped 28 points and almost helped the Demon Deacons pull off the upset in the Dean Dome. So he's already showed that if he does come to Carolina, he could score in the Dean Dome. That those baskets will work just right for him.
He's done it
So.
before.
He's done it before. So obviously something to still be waiting on there. We'll see where he ends up deciding to go to, but would definitely be a huge pickup for Malone if they were able to get Juke. As we start to look into next season, as we finish up tonight's show, I want to potentially look at potential starters and bench pieces all together. So I think right now, as it's currently constructed, I think you're potentially looking at Terrence Brown, Matt Abel, Nicholas Afdalis in the backcourt as your starting guards. And then if we assume that Veesaar returns, I think you're looking at Jarin, Stevenson, and Henri Veesaar as your 4-5 in the front court. That would then leave bench pieces between Maximo Adams, who's a 5-star recruit, Jaden Young, who showed he could come off the bench and contribute and potentially go in the starting lineup as needed. Isaiah Dennis, who in his limited action showed that he'll be able to contribute, and Maxime Logue, who I think would be a good bench piece in the front court. When you hear that, JJ, is there anything that surprises you? Is there anything that gives you a lot of hope going into next season?
Definitely a lot of hope. We have a lot of guys that in that starting lineup that have true basketball experience and in games that really matter as well. So I love seeing that because last year was just such a year of unknowns. We had a bunch of
Right.
transfers who had maybe 4, 5 to 10 minutes per game at their schools prior, and they didn't really have those significant amount of minutes. Now in the starting lineup, you got guys who have played 20, 30 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And you've got guys that are coming back who have been at UNC, can be those pieces to being like, okay, this is how we work at UNC. And so
Right.
I'm really, really, really excited this year just because I think we can definitely contend in the ACC with his team. I think it also does depend on if Veesaar does come back. I think
It's big.
having Veesaar comes back, I think that puts us as an ACC contender. Without Veesaar, I think we are at top 6 ACC basketball team. So
Yeah.
it definitely depends on if we get Veesaar, if we get Juke Harris, or if we get Slim Jesus. You
Right.
never know.
Yeah.
There's still some
Yeah.
more pieces to be added. But let's cross our fingers, hope Veesaar comes back.
Yeah.
I know that draft money probably looks good, my guy. I know it does.
I know it looks good. I know that NIL money looks good as well.
It
so
even looks
it works
better.
both ways.
That's guaranteed.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that's the guaranteed money.
That works both ways. I think currently, as we mentioned, currently constructed, you're probably looking at a team where their floor for a preseason projection in the AP top 25 is probably looking at around the 20 mark. But if Veesaar were to return, if they were also to bring in either Miikka, Muurinen, or Juke Harris, I think you're potentially looking at a team that can maybe even break that top 10 mark.
Yeah.
Between, you'd have guys who are 3-4 guys who have all been proven scorers. Between, if you have Veesaar and Juke, that's 2 guys who will be in the All-American conversation next year. And then guys like Terrence Brown, who averaged 20 points per game last year, Matt Abel, who could show he could shoot the ball, Abdallas could shoot. So I think if Malone was really to get all those pieces together, I think that's the ceiling of you're looking at a team that will be in the top 10 preseason projections going into next season. JJ, what are you, as we close out the show here, what are you most focused on in this next week or so are you looking at just like Veesaar's potential going to the draft or returning, and then a few of these other potential portal pickups?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to put my finger on just whatever situation, because I want to look into this Juke situation, because these are 3 different schools, and he has to play in college. So he's going somewhere. But with Veesaar, I know the NBA draft, the deadline for the early draft period is coming up really soon. So
yeah, this Friday.
I would say just the Veesaar situation, just because that will be the most pivotal piece for Mike Malone and this team going forward, if he can retain a guy like Henri Veesaar. So that would definitely be my number one thing, is looking through that, and also just seeing what else happens in the transfer portal. You can't be mad. UNC has they're a top 10. I think they're 7th ranked in transfer portal rankings in the country.
Right. Yeah.
So they're doing a great job. They're one of the top 10 teams to get the best guys out of the portal and even retain some of the guys. So just looking forward to seeing what Mike Malone does. I'm excited to see their offseason workouts and see how they decide to gel together under year 1 of the Mike Malone regime.
I saw there was a picture going around on social media of Terrence Brown working out with Tyrese Halliburton today in some gym in California. So
that's awesome.
That was pretty interesting. I also forgot to mention when I was going through those bench pieces, our guest who joined the show earlier, Malloy Smith, even though he might not get too many minutes in his freshman year, I think he's definitely a guy who could provide a spark and provide some energy off the bench as well. So
absolutely,
and,
man.
as a son, as a former Tar Heel legend in Kenny Smith, I think it's great that we still have that longtime Carolina blood running through this roster's current players.
For sure. Absolutely grateful to have him here, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, sometimes you need pieces that are a part of UNC, that have that UNC bloodline, just to keep the traditions going, man. And hell, he could have went anywhere he wanted to. He decided to come to UNC. So UNC fans, you got to be grateful for that.
100%. That's going to do it for the 14th episode of the Chapel Thrill Pod. Me and JJ will be back to provide our thoughts and opinions on how the rest of the offseason for Carolina progresses. We'll preview the draft and maybe analyze where Caleb Wilson will end up landing. We'll also have another very exciting guest coming on our next show, which I'll tease, who you don't want to miss. For JJ Jones, I'm Hunter Caparelli. As always, go Heels.
Go Heels, baby.